The stars stretched endless and silent, a sea of dark and silver where countless worlds floated unseen. In that great silence, a fragile voice broke through. It was not a voice in the human sense but a coded message, weak and almost broken, carried by waves of light across empty space. It was an SOS. The colony of Terran was small and forgotten, built by a gentle race who had long ago given up the ways of war. The people of Terran lived by the river valleys of their world, raising tall glass towers and bright gardens that touched the sky. They believed themselves safe, hidden far from the powerful empires that ruled the galaxy. But safety was only an illusion. The raiders came without warning. Dark ships cut across the sky like blades. They fell upon Terran's defenses and shattered them within hours. The colony's defense fleet, built only for patrol and light guard duty, burned quickly in the upper atmosphere. The raiders had no banners and no honor. They sought only to plunder, to take what was easy to take, to break what was fragile. The leaders of Terran gathered in the Hall of Light, a chamber of crystal domes and pale blue glow. Their voices trembled as they spoke of the ruin outside. The raiders were already striking the outer cities. Whole districts had gone dark. The people fled toward the central tower, seeking shelter where there was none. One elder, his skin marked with age lines of silver, said what all feared to speak. "No one will come for us. No one even knows we are here." Yet in their despair, one young counselor rose. Her hands shook, but her voice carried hope. "Send a call. Send it across the void. If any hear, they may come. If none hear, at least we tried." The others agreed, not from belief, but because there was nothing else left to do. And so, deep within the central tower, a signal was prepared. Engineers fed power into the old array, its dishes rising high above the burning city. A bright pulse of coded sound was formed. Words were simple, desperate, unadorned. "This is Terran colony. We are under attack. Our defenses are fallen. To any who can hear, we call for aid. Please." The signal launched into the black. It leapt from star to star, weakened each time it passed through dust or stone, but still it carried. Days passed. Weeks. The colony's skies grew darker as the raiders tightened their hold. The people wondered if the signal had been lost. Perhaps it had slipped into nothing. Perhaps no one cared. The stars themselves seemed silent. But far away, on a blue and green world called Earth, machines stirred. Earth was young among the stars. Its people had only stepped into the greater galaxy a few decades earlier. Their ships were not the largest. Their fleets were not the oldest. Many older races barely noticed them, seeing humans as newcomers still learning how to live among the stars. Yet humans had something others did not. They carried a restless spirit, a hunger to go farther, to see more, to act when others stood still. When their listening stations caught the broken message of Terran, they did not ignore it. They did not ask if the colony belonged to them. They did not weigh the call against profit or politics. The signal was played again and again inside the great command halls of Earth. Officers leaned close to the speakers as the weak voice crackled through static. They heard the words "under attack." They heard "please." And that was enough. At first, there was debate. Some leaders asked why they should risk human lives for strangers in a distant part of the galaxy. Others argued that Earth had its own troubles, its own needs. But a quiet voice rose in that council chamber. A captain named Myra stood and said, "If we do not answer, then who will? If a call for help is ignored, what kind of people are we? Her words spread across the chamber like fire. For a moment, the room grew silent, and then the decision was made. Humanity would answer. Across Earth's orbit, ships began to gather. They were not vast in number, but they were strong and built with care. Crews strapped into their stations. Engines lit with blue fire. The fleet prepared for a journey to a world no human had ever seen, to a people they had never met. The signal from Terran had traveled across endless dark, carrying nothing but desperation and hope. Now it had found its mark. And in that moment, the fate of more than one world began to change. The great meeting hall of Earth's Fleet Command was filled with voices. Leaders, admirals, and ministers argued under the bright lights of the chamber. The message from Terran colony played once more, a weak call that echoed through the speakers, followed by silence. Every time it ended, the silence in the room grew heavier. Admiral Ryan leaned forward, his hand pressing against the table. "It is not our problem. The colony is far. Our resources are limited. If we send ships, we may not have enough to guard our own worlds." Others nodded, their faces tight with caution. Earth was still young in the galaxy. They had built colonies on nearby stars, but their fleets were stretched thin, always ready in case of threat. To send ships so far into the unknown seemed reckless. But Captain Myra stood in the back of the chamber, listening. Her heart burned as she heard the arguments. She stepped forward, her boots echoing on the floor, and spoke with calm but steady voice. "We are not the strongest among the stars, and we are not the oldest. But if a call for help is heard and ignored, then what kind of name will humanity carry? Will we be the people who turned away?" Her words cut through the noise. Some frowned, but others looked at her with quiet respect. The hall fell silent for a long moment. Then a voice from the council chair spoke. "Very well. We will answer." And so the decision was made. Across Earth's orbit, the fleet began to gather. 10 ships were chosen, strong and reliable, each one built for travel across long distance and for defense against danger. Crews from many nations boarded, carrying supplies, fuel, and courage. Families stood at the ports to watch them go, waving hands and holding back tears. They did not know what waited at the far colony. They only knew their people were going to help strangers in need. Captain Myra stood aboard the lead ship, the Dawn Star. She walked the bridge, greeting each member of her crew with firm words and steady eyes. Her second officer, Aaron, looked uneasy. "Captain," he said quietly, "we don't even know what waits for us. This could be a trap. Or worse." Myra placed a hand on his shoulder. "It could be. But someone is out there asking for help. We will go, Aaron. That is who we are." The fleet left Earth in a blaze of light. Engines flared, ships stretched into faster-than-light passage, and the home world faded behind them. For weeks, they traveled through the deep lanes of the galaxy. The stars outside the windows turned to streaks of white, endless, and strange. On the third week, they reached a relay point, a lonely station orbiting a cold moon. There, they replayed the message from Terran. The signal was weaker now, more broken, but it still carried the same desperate words. The crew listened in silence. Even the youngest recruits clenched their fists, their doubts replaced by resolve. Meanwhile, whispers began to spread across other corners of the galaxy. Small trade guilds and wandering fleets had caught hints of the same message. They were shocked to hear that humans, newcomers who had only been among the stars for a short time, were already moving to answer. Many races had ignored the call. Some thought it hopeless. Others thought it not worth the cost. Yet humans, who had little to gain, were on their way. Back on Earth, news spread quickly. The fleet's departure was broadcast across cities and colonies. People watched with pride, knowing their sons and daughters were part of something greater than themselves. They had not gone to conquer, not to take, but to answer a simple plea. Inside the Dawn Star, Myra sat in her chair, staring at the star map glowing before her. She knew the dangers ahead. Raiders could outnumber them. The colony might already be gone. But none of that changed the path they had taken. She whispered to herself, "No one calls for help in silence. We will be there." As the ships raced across the dark, tension grew. Crews trained each day, running drills, sharpening skills. Engineers checked engines again and again. Pilots practiced maneuvers in simulation. Everyone felt the weight of what lay ahead. And then, one night during the long voyage, the lookout on the Dawn Star's bridge shouted. A faint energy trace had been found. A broken signal flickered on the edge of the map. It was Terran. The colony still lived. The crew stared at the signal in silence. Their hearts beat faster. They were not too late. "Set our course," Myra ordered, her voice steady but her eyes fierce. "We are coming." The fleet turned toward the faint light of the colony. Behind them, Earth stood proud. Ahead of them, the unknown waited. Humanity had chosen its path, and the stars themselves seemed to watch in silence as the young race carried its courage forward. The human fleet came out of faster than light travel with a sudden flash of light. The stars returned to normal, sharp, and countless, while before them lay the planet Terran. What they saw made the bridge of the Dawn Star fall into silence. The world below was burning. Dark scars ran across the surface where cities once stood. Plumes of smoke rose high into the atmosphere. In orbit, wreckage floated: broken ships, shattered stations, and pieces of towers torn from the surface. Yet amid the wreckage, raider ships still moved, circling the planet like hungry wolves. On the bridge, Second Officer Aaron spoke with shock in his voice. "Captain, the colony is still under attack. Raiders are in the skies. Their ships are striking the ground." Myra's eyes narrowed. "Then we are not too late. Signal the fleet. Prepare for combat." The order spread from ship to ship. Alarms rang. Crews rushed to stations. Weapons came alive with glowing energy. The 10 human ships formed a wide arc, their formation steady. The raiders noticed the newcomers at once. Dozens of ships broke away from their circle and moved to intercept. They were sharp and jagged vessels, built for speed and aggression. They fired without warning, beams of red light streaking across the void. But the humans did not falter. The Dawn Star rolled to the side, its shields flaring as it absorbed the first blasts. Myra gave her command with calm strength. "Return fire." From the human ships, streams of blue light and bursts of missiles filled the space. The first raider ship exploded in a blaze of fire, scattering fragments across the dark. The humans moved fast, weaving and turning in patterns the raiders had never seen before. They were not the largest ships, but their maneuvers were daring and unpredictable. On the planet's surface, the people of Terran looked up from their hiding places. Through the smoke-filled sky, they saw strange vessels descending, weapons shining bright as they clashed with the raiders. At first, they did not know who these new fighters were. But when the raiders began to fall, hope lit their eyes for the first time in many days. Back in orbit, the battle grew fierce. The raiders tried to swarm the Dawn Star, but the ship spun and twisted with skill. Aaron shouted updates, while gunners locked onto targets with precision. Another raider vessel broke apart under human fire. Then another. Still, the fight was not easy. A blast struck one of the smaller human ships, the horizon flame, and its hull shuddered. For a moment, its lights flickered. But the crew steadied it and pressed forward, refusing to fall. "Keep formation," Myra ordered. "Do not give them space." The fleet tightened, moving as one. Together, their weapons formed a storm of fire that broke through the raider lines. The enemy, who had expected an easy victory over a weak colony, now found themselves outmatched by a force they had never faced before. On the ground, raider troops tried to continue their attack against the colony's central tower. They had pushed the defenders back into narrow streets, their weapons cutting through walls and homes. But suddenly the sky above roared. Human dropships broke through the clouds, engines blazing. They descended like falling stars, landing near the central tower with squads of armored soldiers rushing out. The defenders of Terran watched in disbelief as humans formed lines and returned fire against the raiders. Their armor was simple compared to the shining towers of Terran, but their movements were steady and sure. They pushed forward step by step, forcing the raiders to retreat down the streets they had claimed. In one alley, a group of Terran children huddled near a wall, certain that the end had come. A raider aimed his weapon at them, but before he could fire, a human soldier appeared, his shield raised. The blast struck harmlessly against the shield, and the soldier answered with a bright strike of his own. The raider fell, and the children stared at their strange savior with wide eyes. Across the battlefield, scenes like this repeated again and again. Wherever humans fought, they fought with determination not just to win but to protect. In orbit, the tide had turned. The last of the raider ships broke formation and fled into the deep dark, their courage gone. Some exploded as human missiles caught them, while others vanished into faster-than-light escape. The skies over Terran grew quiet, except for the hum of human engines. The colony's people stood on rooftops and broken streets, staring upward. For days they had seen only fire and fear in the heavens. Now they saw something new, ships that had come for them, ships that fought in their name. On the Dawn Star's bridge, Aaron let out a long breath. "They are retreating, Captain. The skies are ours." Myra did not smile, but her eyes softened. "No. The skies belong to the people of Terran. We only made them safe again." She gave the final order. "Begin landing aid teams. The battle is not over until their people stand free." And so, for the first time in the galaxy's history, humanity's name was spoken on the lips of another race, not as strangers, not as wanderers, but as saviors. The stars had carried a call, and humanity had answered in fire, in courage, and in hope. The raider fleet was gone, scattered into the dark, but Terran's wounds still remained. Cities lay in ruin, smoke rising into the sky. Broken towers leaned like fallen trees, and streets were filled with the sound of cries and fear. The battle had ended, but the colony was far from safe. Captain Myra stood on the bridge of the Dawn Star, watching the screens as her ships scanned the planet below. "Damage reports," she ordered. Aaron read the data as it appeared. 5 cities heavily damaged. Power grids broken in 3 sectors. Civilian casualties, high, but survivors are still gathered near the central tower. He paused, then added, "Captain, Raider ground forces remain. Not many, but enough to cause more harm if we do nothing." Myra's voice was calm. "Then we finish what we started. Send landing teams. No one is left behind." The order spread through the fleet. Dropships prepared once more, carrying human soldiers, medics, and engineers. Unlike before, this time their weapons were not raised for battle alone. They carried food packs, medicine, and repair tools alongside their rifles. The first wave landed near the central tower, where Terran survivors had gathered. The alien people stared as the ships touched down, their engines sending dust across the broken ground. From the ramps, humans marched out, some in armor, others in medical suits. One elder of Terran, his silver-lined skin glowing faintly in the dim light, stepped forward. His voice trembled as he spoke. "Who are you? What name do you carry?" Myra herself stepped down from her ship and faced him. Her armor was scratched from battle, but her voice was steady. "We are from Earth. We came because you called. That is all that matters." The elder bowed his head, his voice breaking. "We thought no one would come." "Someone always comes," Myra answered softly. Around them, humans spread out into the ruins. Medics rushed to treat the wounded, their hands steady as they worked beside Terran healers. Engineers set up portable generators, bringing light back into dark streets. Soldiers pushed into the outer districts, hunting down the last of the raiders who had hidden among the ruins. In one shattered street, a small group of human soldiers found themselves pinned by enemy fire. A raider squad had taken position behind a collapsed tower, firing at anything that moved. The humans did not retreat. Instead, they advanced with slow steps, shields raised, covering each other with precise bursts. The raiders, used to weak defenders, could not match such stubborn strength. Within minutes, the humans cleared the position and secured the street. Terran citizens emerged from hiding places, children, elders, families clutching each other. They looked at the humans with awe, not fear. These strangers from the stars had fought not to conquer, but to protect. Elsewhere, in the gardens that once stretched across the city center, human medics worked beside Terran healers. Together they set up field tents, lining the wounded in careful rows. The air was filled with the sound of quiet voices and the hum of medical tools. One human medic knelt beside a young Terran child whose arm had been injured. She smiled as she worked, speaking gently though the child did not understand her words. Yet the kindness in her eyes was clear enough. By the second day, order returned to the colony. Fires were put out. Streets were cleared. The last raiders were captured or driven away. The survivors began to walk the streets again, no longer only in fear but with hope. At night, when the skies grew quiet, people gathered outside the central tower. They lit lanterns that floated into the sky, hundreds of glowing lights drifting upward. The humans stood among them, silent, watching the lights rise. To the people of Terran, it was a way to honor the lost and thank those who remained. To the humans, it was a reminder of why they had come. Aaron stood beside Myra as the lanterns floated above. "Captain," he said softly, "look at them. They see us not as strangers, but as allies. We've given them more than victory. We've given them hope." Myra nodded, her gaze fixed on the sky. "And hope is stronger than any weapon." The days that followed were filled with rebuilding. Human engineers worked to restore power lines, setting up systems that would last long after they were gone. Supplies from the fleet were shared freely. Food was distributed to hungry families. Every act was a message that humanity did not come to rule, but to help. One evening, the elder of Terran came again to Myra. His eyes were weary, but his voice was strong. "We will remember this. Our people thought the stars had forgotten us. But now, when we look at the night sky, we will know there is a race out there who listens, who answers. Myra bowed her head slightly. That is enough for us. The world of Terran was scarred, but it was not broken. Against all odds, it had survived. And though much work remained, the people now knew they were not alone. The battle was over. The world was saved. And the name of humanity had begun to spread, carried not by fear, but by gratitude. The last fires on Terran were fading, but the story of what had happened was already leaving the world. Messages spread along trade routes and across star relays, carried by merchants, wanderers, and scouts. Wherever the news went, whispers followed. They came from Earth. They fought the raiders and drove them away. They answered a call no one else would. In the halls of powerful empires, ambassadors listened with unease. Humanity was not an old race. Their fleets were small compared to ancient powers. Yet their actions had silenced raiders who had plagued entire regions for years. For the first time, the lawless bands who thrived on fear began to hesitate. A raider captain named Cullen sat in the shadows of a distant station, his ship hidden among drifting asteroids. He listened to his crew report the news. The humans struck Terran. They fought without fear. Others are saying the raiders are retreating. Cullen's scarred face hardened. Raiders lived on weakness, but humans had shown no weakness. He clenched his hand. Then we will not strike where humans walk. They are too dangerous. And so, without firing another shot, raiders began to vanish into silence. On the Dawn Star, Captain Myra watched the stars from the wide glass window of her quarters. The fleet was still in orbit above Terran, but she knew the ripples of their actions were moving far beyond this one world. Aaron entered quietly, holding a report. "Captain," he said, "messages are reaching us from nearby systems. Trade guilds are speaking of us. Some call us saviors. Some call us a threat. And the empires, they are watching." Myra turned from the window. "Of course they are. The galaxy has grown used to silence. But we broke it?" Aaron frowned. "Do you think we did too much? We risked our people, our ships, for a colony that was not ours." Her gaze was steady. "We did what was right. That is never too much." On the surface of Terran, life slowly began to return. The survivors rebuilt their homes, though ruins remained as reminders of what had been lost. Humans worked beside them, helping to raise new towers and reconnect broken bridges. Children followed the human soldiers with curious eyes, tugging at their hands and laughing for the first time since the attack. One evening, in the shadow of a half-rebuilt tower, the elder of Terran gathered his people. He raised his hand, his voice carrying across the crowd. "Remember this. For generations, we believed the stars cold and distant. But now, because of the humans, we know there is warmth beyond our world." They silenced the raiders not with fear, but with courage. "We are not alone." The words were carried on recordings and passed through relay stations. They spread faster than fire. Soon, in distant markets and quiet ports, the story of the humans was told again and again. Meanwhile, raider activity across the sector dropped sharply. Convoys traveled with less fear. Colonies once abandoned began to open trade once more. A strange calm settled over the region, a silence not born of despair but of caution. No raider wished to risk facing the newcomers who had destroyed their kind so easily. In the council halls of a nearby empire, rulers debated. A tall leader with golden robes leaned forward. "These humans, what are they? They are young, but they strike with the power of the old. If they fight for others, then they are dangerous. Another ruler shook his head. Or perhaps they are valuable. To have humans as allies may be worth more than fleets of our own. So it was that fear and curiosity grew side by side. Humanity had not asked for attention, but attention had come all the same. Back on the Dawn Star, Myra met with her officers. The bridge glowed with calm blue light as she addressed them. We came to answer one call. But that call has echoed louder than we expected. The galaxy now listens. We must decide what it will hear next. Her words carried weight. The crew understood that what had begun as a mission of mercy had become something far greater. Humanity's place among the stars was no longer quiet. It was marked, defined, and unforgettable. That night, when Myra walked the halls of her ship, she paused by a window once more. The stars stretched endless, glowing bright, and still. She thought of the silence that had followed humanity's arrival. It was not the silence of fear alone, but also the silence of respect, of wonder. On the world below, the people of Terran slept under peaceful skies for the first time in many cycles. Their lanterns no longer floated in mourning, but in gratitude. They knew that across the stars, danger still lived, but so did hope. Humanity had answered one call. And because of that, the galaxy itself had grown quiet, waiting to see what this young race would do next. The days after the battle were quiet, but questions remained. The people of Terran still looked at the humans with awe. Some smiled, some whispered, and some studied them carefully. No one had ever seen beings from another world fight with such courage, care, and precision. The elders of the colony gathered in the central tower once more. They had survived, rebuilt, and begun to repair their lives, but there was still uncertainty. One elder, his voice soft but serious, spoke to Myra directly. "Why did you come for us? We are not your people. You have no reason to risk your lives for ours." "Why?" Myra considered her words carefully. She did not want to speak as a commander alone. She wanted to speak as a human, as one who understood the fear and hope in their eyes. "When someone cries for help, you answer," she said simply. "We do not ask why, we do not ask for reward. We act because it is right. That is what it means to be human." The elder studied her for a long moment. Slowly, his face softened. "That is not a thought we have heard before. Most races act only for themselves. They trade, they conquer, they take. You act for others." Myra nodded. "And we will continue to do so. Not because it is easy, but because it is the choice we make." Other elders murmured in agreement. Children, who had been quiet during the meeting, looked up and smiled. Humans had not only saved their parents and homes, but they had also brought a new lesson, one of courage, kindness, and honor. As the sun rose over the repaired streets, humans and Terran people worked side by side. Engineers rebuilt bridges and towers. Farmers planted new crops in soil scorched by raiders. Medics treated the last of the injured. The shared labor created a bond stronger than words. In the evenings, humans gathered the young people of Terran and taught them simple skills: how to use tools safely, how to navigate star maps, and how to work together in teams. Laughter returned to the streets for the first time in many cycles. Yet even as trust grew, doubts lingered. Some Terran citizens could not fully believe that humans were entirely without hidden motives. Traders and travelers whispered, "Why do they not demand something in return? Why do they risk their lives for those they do not know?" Myra noticed the questions, though she did not answer directly. She understood that trust must be earned over time. Her actions spoke louder than words. Every repaired street, every healed injury, Every protected citizen proved her point more clearly than any speech could. Meanwhile, the fleet remained in orbit. Human captains discussed future strategies, aware that the galaxy had begun to notice their presence. Aaron approached Myra with a question that weighed on all of them. "Captain, they admire us. They trust us. But some leaders across the stars are wary. Do you think they will accept humanity as an ally or see us as a threat?" Myra's gaze was steady, resting on the small blue planet below. "Some will fear us at first. Some will admire us. But no one will ever ignore us again. Our actions define who we are. And what we have done here will be remembered far longer than any doubt." On the surface, the elder of Terran gathered the people again. "Remember these humans," he told them. "They are not like the others we have known. They came without demand, without fear, without hesitation. Their presence teaches us that we are not alone. That others will answer when we cannot help ourselves." He paused and looked to the sky, where the human fleet glimmered above like silent guardians. "We will honor them not only for saving our lives but for teaching us the meaning of courage." By nightfall, lanterns once more floated into the sky, but this time the light was filled with hope, not sorrow. Children ran between the humans, holding their hands, asking questions, laughing freely. Myra walked among them, observing quietly. She understood that the bond she and her crew had formed with Terran was more than temporary. It was proof that kindness, courage, and honesty could cross the boundaries of worlds. Trust was fragile, yes, but it could grow stronger than fear if nurtured with action. As she looked up at the stars, she felt a quiet certainty. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy not to dominate, not to take, but to teach a simple truth: when a call for help is heard, it must be answered. That truth, once seen, could change the galaxy in ways no weapon ever could. The Terran people were learning that lesson. The young were learning it faster than the old. And the galaxy beyond waited, watching silently, wondering if humans would bring the same courage wherever the stars were dark and danger lingered. Myra turned back to her ship. She had answered one SOS, but she knew the work had only begun. The galaxy would ask many more questions, test their resolve in ways they had not yet imagined. Yet she felt ready, confident in the knowledge that humans fought not for power, but for what was right. And in that knowledge, trust was born both on Terran and beyond the stars. The skies over Terran had finally grown quiet. Smoke from the last fires drifted away, and the stars shone clearly above the repaired cities. Humans and Terran citizens moved side by side, finishing repairs and helping to restore the world. The colony was scarred, but it was alive. Captain Myra stood on the Dawn Star's observation deck, looking down at the streets below. Children ran freely again, and laughter echoed through alleys that had once been silent with fear. She felt a quiet pride, but she also understood that the galaxy beyond waited for what humanity would do next. Aaron approached, holding a report of distant signals. "Captain, the fleet has been monitoring nearby sectors. Traders, colonies, and even some patrols are sending messages about us. Our actions here have not gone unnoticed." Myra nodded. "That was never our goal, but the galaxy sees the truth now. Humanity does not ignore a call for help. That alone changes everything." The Terran elders approached her, their faces a mixture of gratitude and curiosity. "Will you stay?" one asked. "Or will you leave us?" Myra shook her head. "Our mission was to answer the call. We will remain until you are safe, but then we must continue. There are others who may need the same help. That is the path we have chosen." The elders nodded slowly. They had learned much in the past cycles. The humans had shown courage, strength, and compassion in a way no one had expected. Even the young had learned from them. They had seen a race willing to risk everything, not for conquest or reward, but simply to do what was right. At night, the people of Terran gathered once more in the central plaza. Lanterns floated into the sky, filling the night with gentle light. Myra watched silently as the citizens celebrated. She thought of Earth, her home, far away but connected through purpose and will. The news of Terran's salvation spread rapidly. Across distant systems, word of humanity's actions reached traders, diplomats, and explorers. Even long-forgotten raiders paused, reconsidering their choices. Entire sectors fell quiet, no longer daring to attack the weak. Humanity's arrival had created a ripple, a silence that spoke louder than any weapon. In the council chambers of a neighboring empire, leaders spoke quietly among themselves. They are young, one said, but they move with purpose. They fight not for themselves, but for others. We must watch them carefully. Another shook their head. Or perhaps we should join them. A race that answers a call for help may be the ally we need in times to come. Meanwhile, on Terran, humans prepared to leave. Ships were refueled and repaired. Crews loaded supplies for the journey back to Earth. The citizens gathered at the landing zones, waving and calling out, trying to say thank you in words and gestures. Myra watched them, understanding that their lives were changed forever. Before departure, the elder approached Myra one last time. "You have given us hope," he said simply. "Your presence has reminded us that there is goodness beyond our world. We will never forget it." Myra smiled. "We will not forget either. Humanity remembers all calls for help, and this is only the beginning." As the fleet lifted off, the streets of Terran grew quiet again. But the memory of courage and protection remained. The humans did not leave as conquerors, nor as rulers. They left as allies, as friends, as a reminder that even in the vast, dark galaxy, someone would answer a call for help. During the journey back to Earth, Myra reflected on the changes that had begun. Humanity was no longer only a young race. They had proven that they could face danger, act with courage, and inspire others. Their presence alone had shifted the balance in the galaxy, creating hope and caution in equal measure. Aaron joined her on the observation deck. "Do you think they understand what we have done?" he asked. "They understand part of it," Myra replied. "The rest will be seen over time. Actions always speak louder than words. One day, others will follow this example, not because they are forced, but because they choose to. That is humanity's mark on the stars." The fleet continued its journey, leaving Terran behind, but carrying its lessons forward. The galaxy had grown quiet, but not in fear alone. It was a silence filled with respect, with wonder, and with the promise that when someone cries for help, humanity will answer. And in that quiet, the stars themselves seemed to watch. They waited to see where humanity would go next, which worlds they would touch, and what new stories would be born. For one young race, the call of the stars had been answered, and in doing so, the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity's mark was not one of conquest, nor of domination, but of courage, compassion, and hope. The stars had been silent for ages, but now, with humanity among them, they whispered of new possibilities.